Something frozen in the audio.
How about now? Can someone let us know if you can see us now?
I think it's live now.
Okay. Did you guys hear any of our wonderful introduction?
Let's just start again.
Okay. I want to make sure before I start that everyone can hear us. Josh, can you text in the chat and let us know if you can hear us and see our slide? Thank you, Tabitha. Tabitha said that she can see us. So let's go ahead and start again. I am Dr. Jennifer Towns, and I am the Associate Dean of Professional Development here at Southwest Tennessee Community College. And today, Matthew and I are going to talk about our center and shifting mindset and changing behaviors and developing a culturally responsive center for teaching and learning. We weren't very far into our talk, so I'm going to pass the mic and let Matthew reintroduce himself.
This is what we're all learning how to do, right? Thank you, Jennifer. So I'm Matthew Lexo. I'm the Assistant Dean of High Impact Practices and Innovation at Southwest Tennessee Community College. You'll learn more about how our office joined ranks with the Teaching Academy. The High Impact Practices and Innovation has been sort of the house of HIPS at Southwest for several years now, and I'm proud to call it home. So with that, go ahead, Jennifer.
Thank you. So we started out in 2018 as part of the second year work of Achieve the Dream. And our goal was focusing on teaching and learning. I started out as the Lone Ranger in 2018. And in 2019, the Office of High Impact Practices joined us, and we acquired 2 instructional designers and a technical clerk, rounding out our team of 5. And our presentation today will be focused really on the work that we've done around culturally responsive teaching, but we will mention our professional development structure as a whole. And we talk a little bit about how we have integrated teaching and learning and culturally responsive teaching, but also just talk about our teaching and learning in general. We started out with 4 goals, and I think Matthew and I really focused on setting these goals during our work at ATD in 2018, I believe, or 2019. It's been a ride, so I'm not sure about dates and times anymore. But around 2019, we sat down and we wrote goals based on our strategic plan. And 4 of those goals are that faculty will use data to inform their teaching practices. Faculty are going to be trained to use culturally responsive course content and teaching practices, and that we will work with the institution to create clear policies and procedures and standard practices that facilitate equity-mindedness in the learning environment. And lastly, we will work to create a pathway for faculty evaluation and recognition to support and reward new evidence-based instructional practices. And so far, we are in year 1.5, and I think we are hitting all of our milestones that we've set for our goals. Some of the goals we have set to implement at scale at the first or second semester. Some of these goals are set to implement after up to 5 or 6 semesters. So we're trying to be intentional as we work to scale our teaching practices. So historically, Southwest has offered a large professional development opportunities, and they had a history of signing up for training actually before I even came along. But over the years, we've created an opportunity for 3 large convenings where we can focus on teaching and learning throughout the semester. And that is the fall at the week before school starts, and the spring in January, and then in the summer around our Summer Institute. And we decided when we set our goals that we will try to create opportunities to introduce the idea of culturally responsive teaching. And some of those offerings include a common reader and culturally responsive teaching practices that involve guest speakers. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about those sessions offerings. And then Matt is going to follow up and talk about that feedback the faculty are given about those training opportunities. So first off, we started with a common reader. Last year, we introduced Creating a Path to Success in the Classroom by Dr. Kathleen Gabriel. We offered monthly discussions around each chapter. We had multiple opportunities for faculty to attend. In an effort to make sure that we included adjuncts, we offered evening and weekend sessions. Those sessions were pretty well attended. Dr. Gabriel was our keynote address for our winter recharge, and we had 93 faculty to come. And I want to tell you a little bit about how dedicated these faculty members are. It was January 13th, and we did not have, our air was out or something was broken, and it was like 92 million degrees in the room. It was very hot. And we were in our library's lecture hall, which seat 87, I believe, and we were at capacity plus some. And even though it was very hot and uncomfortable in the room, the faculty stayed the entire time and they remained engaged the entire time. It was quite impressive. And so we had breakout sessions where Dr. Gabriel led 2 additional sessions, and about 63 faculty attended those in total. And now my 2020 new faculty orientation cohort is actually reading this book. So it was our common reader that we read last year, and we had a significant amount of faculty to engage in the book club. And then now my new faculty members are engaging in the common reader in our new faculty orientation. This year, our common reader is Culturally Responsive Teaching in the Brain by Zaretta Hammonds. We've done it a little differently this time. Last year, we did one book over 2 semesters, and we had multiple offerings in an effort to be more, to create a community of practice where we can have more intentional discussions and a more structured format. We decided that we would offer 3 cohorts. And we required that they, 1, be available to participate in all of the sessions, and 2, sign up for all the session times at the same day. So if you're going to be in the Friday cohort, sign up each Friday, and so forth for Thursday evening and as well as Saturday morning. So we had 3 offerings. We only had a few people sign up for Saturday, so they decided to move to Thursday or Friday group. So we currently have 2 community of practice with 31 faculty engaged. The groups have met twice. We're meeting twice a month, and we're finishing the book this semester. And each faculty member has a focus class in which they are going to use to implement and do their reflective practices with. And we will engage with the author of the book in January during our winter recharge. She will do a large keynote address, and then she will also spend some time with the individuals who have gone through the book. And then we will have our spring cohort kick off in January. So faculty who are interested and available to do the same thing that the fall group did. So we're trying to offer multiple opportunities throughout the semester. Next slide. We also, along with those common readers, we are offering several types of sessions around culturally responsive teaching. This summer, we kicked off our 2020 professional development series, which kind of took the place of our Summer Institute. We didn't have it because it was scheduled to be in May, and we had to cancel it due to COVID. So we ended up keeping the element of culturally responsive teaching. During our Summer Institute, we had scheduled one whole day with panelists who would be able to talk about specific topics around CRT. Most of those panelists agreed to come back in the summer instead of participate during the Summer Institute. They came and volunteered for our Summer 2020 session. So we had 4 days in July, and each day focused on one area. And I've included images of all of our panelists. Our panelists were individuals from our institution, and as well as individuals across the state, and then also across our TBR system. We had CRT around content, policy and procedure, assessments, and wraparound services. We also had, and we've also, from that 2020 series, developed a couple of small groups and also invited Dr. Richard Milner from Vanderbilt University to come and do some sessions. So in September, he came and offered 4 sessions. He offered 2 content-specific sessions where math and science faculty could come and participate. Dr. Milner provided specific examples and ways in which they can include CRT practices within their classroom. And then he followed up with opportunities for humanities and business. He also did an institution-wide session. It was open to anyone at the institution. And lastly, he did a small group session for those individuals who are participating in special programs. So we have equity and inclusion practitioners who are faculty and staff from across the institution that are reviewing policies and procedures around E&I. We also have our CRT group, which I will talk a little bit about later. They were invited to participate. And then lastly, we had our gatekeeper fellows who are working to identify ways in which we can increase retention in those gatekeeper classes. Those sessions were hugely successful. We had up to 70 faculty members and staff come to our large session, and then a significant number of individuals from each content area come. And we now have a small group, a community of practice that's been led by Mr. H. Ray Keith. He is an ATD recognized presenter. We met him when we were at the ATD session. He and his group presented, and we were very impressed with the work, and we wanted to not only Matt and I create an opportunity for us to learn, but also have those extended intentional small group conversations for faculty who participated in the summer. So this was a special invite group. We identified the faculty and staff who had come to at least 75% or more of the sessions that were offered in the summer, and asked them if they would come and do our 5-session small group with Mr. Keith. In fact, we will be going and joining him right after we leave here. His 5 sessions focus on helping us understand what culturally responsive teaching is. We talked about disrupting whiteness, and our last 3 sessions will be around us bringing artifacts from our classroom, and we're going to explore our teaching practices, specifically our teaching practices and our artifacts around our content, our policies and procedures, our syllabus, our assessments, our learning activities. So it's going to be an opportunity for us to do some reflective work.
Jennifer, I see that there are some comments in the chat function right now. And I think this would be a good time if we want to just take a minute. We've now, Jennifer, Dr. Towns has shared quite a bit of detail about what we've done over the past, I mean, to be quite honest, a lot of this work has happened in just the last year, but quite a bit of work of what we've done in the last year to develop culturally responsive teaching, culturally responsive pedagogy, and an emphasis on that at Southwest. And Sally mentions in the chat that it looks like Nashville State is reading Equity Talk to Equity Walk. Anyone else out there want to share in the chat function what you're doing with regard to CRT, or culturally responsive teaching? And just by way of kind of checking the pulse of our faculty after all of the great work that Dr. Towns has described, we took a moment at the beginning of this semester, just after Dr. Milner's presentations, to send a short survey to our faculty who participated in the sessions to get a gauge in terms of faculty sort of self-conception and understanding of culturally responsive teaching, how they're employing it, how comfortable they feel with it. And I think what's impressive is that after that session, almost 49% of our faculty report feeling familiar with the basic principles of CRT. Now, I think the number of participating faculty in that survey was just over 40, I believe. But nevertheless, to have a core group of faculty who feel comfortable with the principles of CRT says quite a lot, given the relative brevity that we've had introducing these principles and policies to our faculty. I think more importantly, though, those who already felt like they were familiar with culturally responsive teaching are reporting even greater degree of familiarity. So those faculty who report the highest degree of familiarity with the principles of CRT increased by 200%, and those who report the lowest degree of familiarity dropped by 100%. And over 60% of the faculty who responded to the survey say that they have already implemented elements of culturally responsive teaching in their courses. And the last set of bullet points are some examples from that survey of what faculty are doing. And I think you might look at this and say, well, those are maybe small ball changes, but we know that really being more flexible with policies, allowing opportunities for one-on-one interactions with students, developing assignments that reflect diversity of students' life and experience. These are all really, really crucial elements of culturally responsive teaching. And the willingness, I think, that we see in our faculty is really inspiring to allow for more ways of including the voice of the student in the classroom, engaging with social and political issues, which we know can be sometimes contentious, and even things like redesigning course syllabi. So I know that Dr. Towns and I are inspired by the work that we're seeing at Southwest, and it looks like some of the comments in the chat are revealing that there's similar work happening around the state. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Dr. Towns.
Thank you. Our professional development is not just one and done. We have built a model of iterative offerings that allow faculty to learn, to implement, and then to reflect. So one of those, some of the examples of our implementation includes new faculty orientation. New faculty orientation. And that was actually a change that was brought about through our work at ATD. We wanted, historically, we've provided faculty with not a lot of support when they are just getting into the classroom. So through our new faculty orientation, we redesigned it, and it's actually an academic year long. Faculty start out at the beginning of the semester with a 3-day kickoff. It's all day. They get to learn about those things that they will need to be successful the first month. And then we meet monthly and we talk about specific ideas around teaching and learning. We talk about what have you used from our last session? How did that work? What didn't work? And then we try to see if we can make changes, throw it out, or reflect on our teaching practices. And I think that has been immensely successful because faculty are now at least better off than where they've started. We've given them that opportunity to work on changing our Southwest culture from the onset. We don't have to worry about undoing a lot of those habits that were started. We start them out, talking about equity, talking about culturally responsive teaching, talking about what it means to be a practitioner, what it means to look at that data and make changes based on that, what it means to create a classroom culture. So those are some of the things that we do. And we do that because we want to make sure that they actually become practitioners. Matt, I'm going to let you go ahead and talk about our transparency and learning, and then also your HIPs.
And so two of the other ways in which we've onboarded this iterative model of training with faculty are with our TILT, or Transparency in Learning and Teaching model, and then also with our high impact practices. So some of you, I'm sure, are familiar with the TILT model. This has been sort of made popular by Marianne Winkleness, who's now at Brandeis. Dr. Towns and I were first introduced to the TILT model in our participation with the NASH TS3 HIPS project. And after interacting with and meeting Dr. Winkelmess, we decided that it would be in our interest to bring on TILT training at Southwest. We were able to participate in, I think it was a system-wide training session, virtual training session with Dr. Winkelmess. So we were able to bring in faculty from Southwest. I know our sister institutions across the state were able to participate as well. And really at the core of it, I'm not here to do a session on TILT, but what's important to keep in mind is that this transparency model really nicely supplements the concern that we have around culturally responsive teaching. And the reason for that is because the notion of access is not the same thing as the experience that a student has. I've been fortunate to listen to many people over the last day and a half, many of them my colleagues and peers at Southwest, and we've heard this time and again, that simply because somebody's in the room doesn't mean that they have the same experience as somebody who comes in with sort of a different history and different conditions. And TILT, at least in some way, helps to level the playing field, as it were. And so the iterative model that we took on board with TILT was, as I said, we began with the large training facilitated by Dr. Winkelmess. We then led some larger TILT training opportunities at Southwest at our Faculty Development Day, Winter Recharge, and Summer Institute sessions. But then, and I think this is the real beauty of Dr. Towns' emphasis on the iterative model, is we developed a small community of practice in the fall of 2019, where several faculty members worked together to do what we call a design charrette, effectively, around transparency in learning and teaching. So we all came into the space together, we shared an assignment prompt, and we worked through elements of transparency. The three key elements that Dr. Winkelmess identifies are purpose, task, and criteria. So we tried to read through one another's assignments as if we were novices. Surprisingly enough, 3 of the 4 of us were all in the same discipline, but it was a very productive series of meetings. We met, we designed, we took those redesigned assignments, we used them in the classroom, we came back and reported on the experience of delivering the assignment and where possible, what we saw in terms of improved performance from our students. And then we went forward from there to consider redesigning our syllabi in the ways that we could with an eye towards transparency. So this was first piloted in the fall of 2019, and a second community of practice started in the spring of 2020. And of course, as a result of COVID-19, that was kind of slowed down, but it's still a practice that we endorse at Southwest, and especially I think promoting it through these large scale and smaller scale avenues has proven to be quite successful. Another element of iteration that we employ at Southwest is in our Office of High Impact Practices and Innovation, or what we'll call the HIPPY office. We do quite a lot with HIPPY. We develop, implement, and code and assess the high impact practices that are offered at Southwest. I'm really proud to say that on average, we're coding over 100 classes a semester. We've seen a dip this semester as a result of COVID, but nevertheless, HIPs are a strong and lively component of the student experience at Southwest. In order to help better deploy high impact practices across the campus and across the college, we've developed faculty learning communities that are led by our high impact practice coordinators. So they work with a small group of faculty to learn together best practices, to do some problem solving, and to share ideas and to share assessment results in the classroom. So here's our incredible high impact practices faculty on the right side of the screen. So how do we bring faculty on board? Well, we advertise during the events that Dr. Towns and I have already talked about things like Faculty Development Day. Dr. Towns mentioned her extensive new faculty orientation. We take advantage of that and bring in, myself and usually one or two other representatives from the office to talk about high impact practices and how new faculty can join the HIPPY crew, or how they can make use of these high impact practices in their classrooms. Again, as I've already mentioned, we develop faculty learning communities, and those are like truly open, where we can bring new faculty on board without much of a barrier. And then we've also been fortunate to take advantage of training across the state and across the country. And you see at the bottom of the screen on the left-hand side, many of the partners that we've worked with. So of course, the Board of Regents, but then also Motivate Lab out of the University of Virginia has been crucial for providing us resources and training and introducing new ideas for how to scale and develop HIPS. We have been an active part of the HIPS in the State conference. We were there the first meeting in Los Angeles, and we will be well represented at the end of this month at the virtual meeting at IUPUI. And we've also had friends and colleagues from AAC and U join us for training sessions and small one-on-one training sessions with the HIPPY coordinators, but then also larger events across the college and across the campuses. When we offered our summer culturally responsive teaching during that time, we also included guests before and after from AAC&U, Motivate Lab, TBR, and then our friends and partners from HIPS in the States. So it's a very lively community, and we have an incredible amount of resources to rely on and to contribute to. We're not just borrowing. I think we're giving quite a lot back to the HIPS community. So while that's a very sunny story about high impact practices, and it's a story that I'm proud to share, we know nationally at the state level, and certainly even at Southwest, high impact practices oftentimes suffer from an equity gap. And there's a little bit of data here. The data that are shared at the top of the screen are all taken from the fall 2019 semester. And what you see here, and these are specific to service learning and learning community courses offered at Southwest, we see these persistent gaps. First generation students in service learning, we see a 9% gap compared to the non-service learning courses. Learning community courses, we see an 8% gap for Black students participating in learning community courses compared to the non-learning community courses offered at Southwest. An even larger gap when it comes to service learning courses offered, it's 12%. And then we also see a Latinx student participation gap of about 3% in those learning community courses. Overall, if we look at all of the courses that are coded for high impact practices at Southwest, and if we look at the sort of longer timeline, we started coding in earnest in 2016, 2017. So we have that 150% time to completion data set, but we still see on average about a 4% Black student deficit in terms of participation in high impact practices at Southwest, where we also see a plus 10% white student participation in high impact practices. And if we go even sort of into finer detail about the campuses and sites that Southwest comprises, we see our two main campuses, which are our Macon Cove campus and our Union Avenue campus. Those are really home to the bulk of high impact practices, but we have several other sites and centers across both Shelby County and Fayette County that unfortunately we're not seeing high impact practices offered in any sizable or really meaningful way at those sites and centers. So if we're truly committed to equity, and I know that we are, that is high impact practices, have an obligation to not only include a better representation of students, serve our students in an equitable manner, but that also would have to come through offering our high impact practices at all of our site centers and campuses. So it's exciting stuff and we're very proud of it, but there's of course always so much more work to go forward and do. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to you, Dr. Towns.
Thank you, Matt. Well, I want to spend some time talking about our session attendance. And I would like to start out by saying that all of our sessions are voluntary. We do not require that any of our faculty attend. And so when we look at these numbers, I think that it stands to reason that this is impressive. We have this level of attendance around this specific topic for faculty who want to engage and who want to learn more. So it always warms my heart to see those numbers. More specifically, I want to talk about culturally responsive teaching, and then also as it relates to our small group numbers as well. These faculty have committed a huge amount of time, because our sessions are anywhere from an hour and a half, and then with our being led by Mr. Keith, 3 hours plus homework the entire semester. And it's the information and the content is not really for the faint of heart. It's some very heavy information. And so given what we know, and then given the topic of conversation, which when we talk about culturally responsive teaching, we always end up with race. We end up talking about race. We talk about social justice issues. And we know that those are not easy issues to talk about. So when I look at my session and I look at the total number of sessions that were offered, these are the sessions that began in July of 2020. So beginning with our virtual trainings in July, we have had a total of 510 participants. And so that is a duplicated number. That means that faculty have come and attended more than one session. But then if you look at the distinct count of learners, you have 173. We have about, at any given time, about 180 to, right under 190 full-time faculty. And then we have, it varies with adjuncts, but about 2/3 of our teaching are adjuncts. And so we have 179 unduplicated. That means 179 individuals have attended at least one of these sessions, and most have attended more than one. And I would like to point out also that 48 of those participants are adjuncts. And we know our adjuncts do not get paid to attend additional training, but it says a lot that they want to continue to engage. And Matt and I have always been intentional about trying to duplicate the session offerings in the evening and weekends so that our adjunct faculty can take advantage of the training. So those are our grand total just for the session offerings around culturally responsive teaching. As I've said before, we don't just do culturally responsive teaching. And actually those ideas and tenets of culturally responsive teaching show up in all of the sessions that we offer. When we offer Microsoft Teams training, we integrate those practices into our training. We want to make sure that these faculty are doing these things while teaching in Teams. When we talk about course alignment, we're talking about that from a lens of equity, making sure that when we look at our student learning outcomes and we look at the learning content we provide and we look at the things that we're assessing, we're making sure that we're addressing those tenets of culturally responsive teaching and equity. And so it shows up a lot, but I just think that just these sessions that are offered reflect this number of attendance.
Dr. Towns, if I can stay on this slide for a second, there's a comment in the chat function that I think you're definitely in a better position to answer this than I am.
Mm-hmm.
He says the number of attendees is very impressive. Looks like there's a lot of interest in the issues. I think we know firsthand that that's the case, but if you wouldn't mind just taking a second and just saying something about how you've seen a shift, or what kind of shift maybe you've seen in terms of faculty response and interest in professional development more generally at Southwest in your time as the director and now associate dean of Teaching Academy, assistant dean, I'm sorry, associate.
Certainly. As I said earlier, the Teaching Academy was born in 2018, but there was a culture of training that was already established before I got there. They tracked a lot of their training, and that most of the training occurred during their summer institute. And I think early on, I'm an instructional designer, so I always start out with a needs assessment. I know there was a felt need, but I wanted to just hear from faculty what types of training they wanted. And I wanted to hear why, because in the past there were sessions being offered, but they weren't very well attended. And I think that for me and for our team, we start out just addressing the need that is felt by faculty. So a lot of our sessions, outside of culturally responsive teaching, because we know that this is needed. We have a demographic of students who are minorities, who are underrepresented students who are first generation. And so the culturally responsive teaching aspect is something we just need. And regardless of it being felt, I think that's just something that has always been needed. But I think overall, I think that the Teaching Academy really does a good job, and not just myself, but my team extended, at identifying what those training needs are based on what the faculty give us. So after each one of our sessions, we try to get feedback. We ask, we try to establish what was learned. We try to figure out how they plan on implementing what was learned. And then we ask, what would they be interested in continuing to learn? And so we offer that. And I can share with you that when we started out, I think our first semester, the attendance wasn't that great, but over time, with looking at feedback and asking faculty just specifically, why, you didn't come, or, what was the issues. I think once we kind of shifted to address those issues, they came. But I can't really take the credit for a lot of that, because there was already an established culture of training before we got there. But I think we just really did a good job of trying to identify what those needs are based on faculty responses, and identifying and presenting that. And then also we allow faculty to help support that training. So right now we have several faculty who are Teaching Academy fellows who are leading training. So, of course, we've shifted to remote learning. So there's a need for more Teams training. We get an abundance of emails or requests for support. So we identified a faculty member who could help support and roll out training. So we have that. So that's a high need. And so we track that training. It's very well attended. So we'll continue to produce that.
Great. Thank you. And let's go ahead and go on then, because you've already started to talk about the lessons that we've learned. And let's turn to that. Go ahead.
So as part of what I was just saying earlier, we need to make sure that we consider the date and time to maximize the attendance. I think part of the problem is that we have 7 locations. We have 2 main campus sites, and we have some sites and centers. And the problem was that, we identified that Tuesday was probably optimal. Tuesday in the afternoon was the best time to offer. However, if a faculty is teaching at Union, the likelihood that they'll make it and be able to drive across town to be able to get to Macon, or vice versa, or any site or center, I think that we had to consider that. So once we started offering not only sessions in the afternoon, but also repeating that session at multiple campus locations. So I think that was one of our first lessons learned. And then provide sessions and survey feedback, and commit to continuous improvement. I know we had a session during our summer professional development series. During the summer, Matt and I had Tuesday and Thursday offerings beginning in June, once a week, all the way through the end of July. And in one of our sessions, it was around accessibility and accommodation. And there were a ton of questions, and we immediately knew that this session alone was not going to be enough. So we sent out a survey that shortly after the training, we asked them what they would like to know, what questions they have. We identified some partners in student affairs to be able to come and help us present. And then we offered another session. So we provided surveys, and we're committed to making those continuous improvements based on what they say. And then we need to make sure that we connect training to a pathway for credit. We have Bridge, that's our professional development platform. So faculty can not only sign up for training, they can sign up for face-to-face training, they can sign up for remote e-learning, self-paced courses, and they can also track their training, as well as their managers can assign training to them and track their training. We want to make sure that they can use that platform to continue to grow. They can set goals for themselves, and then also we want to identify ways in which we reward this work. So we have community of practices, and we want to make sure that those people are acknowledged, so that can be part of their credentialing package, their dossiers, their tenure and promotion. So we try to make sure that we incentivize them and connect that training. And then use faculty to participate in professional development. Like I said earlier, we have Teaching Academy Fellows, our Summer Institute, and our Winter Recharge, and our Fall Professional Development Days are majority led by faculty presentations. And so whenever possible, we try to use faculty because we want them, one, to be agents, but two, they are professionals and they can contribute to this body of knowledge that we have. And they are a great source. And so we need to, maximize that. And so we always try to find opportunities. So sometimes our faculty fellows are actually paid, but our other faculty who present are volunteers. We also use faculty to demonstrate the work. So we had Emily Ford, one of our English faculty, to create a syllabus after her TILT training. And so we asked her if she would present during our Summer Institute about what she did, how she did it, and then help faculty do the same. And then lastly, we want to work to continue to promote cross-college partnerships. So we are working with Dr. LaDonna Young and the Great Gatekeeper Fellows. We try to support all of their efforts. We give them a platform during all of our major convenings. We support them as they're developing their courses in Bridge, just however they need us. We're working with Dr. Taylor, and she supports the Title III grant, and she has provided opportunities for us to bring those campus presenters, Dr. Milner, Mr. Keith, have all been funded by our Title III. So we're maximizing those cross-campus partnerships. We have, during our virtual professional development series, we had people from Student Affairs come talk about what CRT and that wraparound service looks like. Dr. Taylor, Javonta Farmer, Mr. Salim came over all of these areas outside of our classroom, because we know that it just doesn't happen inside of the classroom, and it has to be a collective effort. So I think taking all of those lessons, we're able to each semester and each year scale what we're doing and improve upon it. And we also really want to continue to model a framework that we hope that faculty would use in their classrooms. So it's iterative. We want them always to be reflecting. We want them to use data to make informed decisions. So then we do those things ourselves in the Teaching Academy. So those are our lessons learned. And I think, Matthew, if you don't have anything, we can go to the next slide.
I do want to add, I want to emphasize what you just said. Just as you began by mentioning the goals that we've set for ourselves in the Teaching Academy, including things like making use of culturally responsive teaching, data-informed decision-making, that I think we do a very, very good job, and you do a very good job of modeling that in the way that we offer sessions for our faculty, the way that we develop sessions. And it seems that has made a pretty big impact on faculty, right? That they see, here's our approach to it. Here's how the Teaching Academy goes forward with developing offerings and interventions. And that I think it eases the transition then for faculty to do that on their own. They feel very supported. I know from my sort of position of being both a faculty member, but also working as an administrator, I've heard from a number of faculty that they've really supported they've really appreciated the offerings, and they do feel supported. And just one last thing, as you've already mentioned, to bring back the importance of hearing from our partners in student affairs, from our friends. And there's a question about the libraries that I know I've gotten a lot of great resources and high impact practices from our library staff, but then also the many, many partners that we have both across the state and really across the country who can come to Southwest, work with us, with our faculty, and really, I think, inspire faculty to go on. I mean, the fact that you and I, Dr. Towns, are headed to a 3-hour meeting about culturally responsive teaching immediately after this, I think really speaks to the kind of like hunger that I think our faculty have. And I think we're doing a fun job of feeding them. So with that, I'm going to move over to Q&A.
It looks like we have a few questions in the comment section. Can you read those? It's kind of small for me.
Yeah, it looks like the last question from Sally is asking, did librarians participate in this? And I'm not sure if that, I'm not sure when that question came up, but if you want to maybe say a few words about the way that librarians in the library have participated in training, teaching.
The library is now taking over our OER, Open Education Resources project, and it was formerly housed in the Teaching Academy. So we're partnering with the library to make sure that we support faculty as they look to engage in identifying resources that will help ease the burden of purchasing textbook material. The library also is a partner when we need them to come and lead training around our new faculty orientation. I think oftentimes we forget about the library because they are a huge resource for us. Anytime I've needed resources, I just send it to Patrick, and he helps. When I need him to help me find resources for faculty when we're engaging in course development, I send him the syllabus, and he sends me a trove of resources based on those SLOs and also the content listed in the syllabus. So we're trying to continue to grow that partnership and to help faculty understand that the library is there and the capacity in which they can provide those additional resources. And I think that now that they are leading our OER project, I think now that faculty will see them more as a resource than they have, and we're collaborating a little bit more. So we've collaborated in the past on a bunch of projects. They always are there for us when we need, when I ask them to come and do sessions during Winter Recharge, during Summer Institute, and during our fall training, and also during my new faculty orientation. They come to we also have adjunct orientation. They come and present there as well. So we are trying to continue to grow our friends in the library. I'm not sure where that question was, but I hope I answered it. Also, somebody asked about the what kinds of training do the trainers receive? Are you talking about our faculty fellows? Typically, our faculty fellows are people who are already well versed in that area. So we have Raquel Adams doing technology enhanced learning. So she took it upon herself to do some training around, and she's also leading some Adobe Sparks training as well. So because she's well versed and feels comfortable, we identified her based on that comfort level. So there was really not a lot of extended training for her. But our instructional designers also go through the same training that we go through. We read together, we try to learn together, and we try to become students. So we are facilitators of these sessions, but we sit right on down and take notes and learn and try to reflect as well. So, and we do the same. We provide those opportunities for everybody on our team. Any more questions?
There's a question about Merlot as a means to finding OER resources.
Merlot is just one of many, but we're working with TBR and the OER initiative, and that one is a platform that has come up, but it's just one of many that we use. We've used OpenStax a lot. We have a couple years ago when we launched the OER initiative, we had a cohort of faculty to go through, but no one really used Merlot. They used Lumen Learning, and they used OpenStax and maybe Alta as a homework platform. So those were a few, but that was among the ones that we used.
And then Aaron asks if we'll roll the PD over to next year. And I think there are certain elements of our professional development platform that persist from semester to semester. CRT, culturally responsive teaching, is, I think, at the heart and center of what we do. the offerings will probably change in sort of the big scale, but the core elements will be the same. High impact practices training is consistent around working with the HIP specialists at TBR, Melinda Connor. We've really emphasized the importance of the key elements of quality and high impact practices. Similarly, TILT or transparency training is key. Dr. Towns mentioned for new faculty orientation, we do an emphasis on growth mindset, but beyond that as well, from our work with Motivate Lab, growth mindset, value affirmation, and sense of belonging interventions. So those things are all key. And then of course, technology, how to use technology in the classroom, Microsoft Teams, which is the platform that we use for our remote teaching, and even to some degree, functionality within our LMS. And Dr. Towns, is there anything you'd want to add to that in terms of what will roll over?
Yes, we'll continue to do Common Reader, though we will change out the readings. So we will continue to have Common Reader opportunities. We will have faculty who would like to lead sessions and become facilitators, take over and lead some and revamp any of them that are really popular. We've identified 3 faculty members who could be potential facilitators for our culturally responsive teaching in the brain, and also creating a pathway to success. And so we want to, some of those books we want to continue to use. I'm going to continue to use that book for our new faculty orientation because it's a good anchor, because it covers all of those topics around teaching and learning, create what to do the first month, some practices once the semester starts, things to consider. So it's really a lot of element and opportunities to focus on self. I'd also like to say, and I don't think I covered it, but that in a lot of our sessions, especially the ones around culturally responsive teaching and equity and inclusion, we really set a norm for our faculty to look at things that they can change within their classroom. So we talk about data at the national, state, local, and at our college level, but then we really put an emphasis on using I statements and really just thinking about what it is that they can do to change within their classroom. So we're not going to focus on things that are really outside of what we can change. We can make recommendations to the institution, become part of a larger scale change organizations and groups. But in those groups, in that time, the work is around us and reflecting on our practices. So I think that using with that model and those frameworks around Common Reader, we're always continue to offer sessions around looking at our SLOs, what are objectives, how to make sure that those are aligned, because those are things that we'll continue to need to look at and explore and examine. We do use, someone asked, do you use universal design for learning guiding principles? Yes, when we engage in online course development, we use elements of universal design with particular attention to SLOs, learning content, accessibility, and feedback and assessments. But really, when we talk about the design of the class, though, that the principles of UDL do show up in our online course development. I think we have about 3 more minutes if you have any more questions. Well, if there are no more questions, Matthew and I would like to thank you very much for coming out and hearing what we have to say. I don't think we made a slide with our contact information. I meant for us to do that, but I think you can find our contact. We're at Southwest Tennessee Community College. You can look us up if you would like to continue the conversation, have an extended conversation. We would love to do that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.